Hey Goobers, and welcome back to class. Today we are going to be learning about volume. So the first step to learning about volume is to learn about all the different kinds of formulas for each different shape and 3D object we're going to be using to find volume. So the first one is pretty simple. It's a rectangular prism, and all you have to do is length times width times height. It's just like area, but you're just adding height on top of it. Now a cylinder is a little tricky. You're going to do volume equals pi r squared times height. So again, if you notice, it is just the area formula being multiplied by height. So again, if you can remember the area formula for a rectangular prism or a cylinder, and then you multiply that by height, super simple to remember. Your last one is the rectangular pyramid, which is a little tricky. This one isn't as well known or as easy to remember. The volume is length times width times height divided by 3, or volume is 1/3 length times width times height. Both work perfectly fine. It almost looks a lot like the area formula for a triangle, but it is 1/3 instead of a half, and then as well as multiplying by the height. So if you can write those down, I highly recommend it, so you can always look back and remember those later on. So we're going to start with a practice problem of a rectangular prism. Again, the volume formula is volume equals length times width times height. So if we look to our shape, we can find the width is 6.5 centimeters. So we can go ahead and put 6.5. Our length is 3, so we can multiply that by 3. And our height is 10. So we can multiply by 10. And then we're going to go through and multiply. I see this 10. I think that's super simple to go ahead and multiply. So 6.5, and I'm going to multiply 3 and 10 to get 30. So now what's left is 6.5 times 30. And when you multiply those together, you get 195. Now usually when you're doing area, you're going to do units squared. But what's really important about this, when you're doing volume, is you're doing units cubed. The way I like to look at this or think about it is it's just like I'm doing 6.5 units times 3 units times 10 units. And you have to remember to include how many units there are. So there are 3, so it'd be units cubed, if that makes sense. Otherwise, just remember, when you're talking about volume, you're doing units cubed. So the volume of this rectangular prism here is centimeters cubed. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our cylinder. And if we think back to our notes that we took earlier, our volume formula is volume equals pi times radius squared times height, where this is our area formula, and we're multiplying it by the height. So when you are using pi at this stage, we're just going to be using 3.14. Now, if we want to get really specific, we can use all of pi, but all of pi is super duper long and difficult to remember. And now we're going to look for our radius, which we can see the radius is right here because it is the line that goes from the center to the outer edge of a circle. And we can see that it's labeled as 25 inches. So we can put 25, and we're going to square 25. And then our height, which is just how tall our cylinder is 40 inches. So we can go ahead and multiply those out, but let's start with the easiest step first, or the most important, which is squaring that 25. which is going to get 625. And we're still multiplying by 40. So we can tell we're going to get a really big number. So go ahead, 3.14, and now we're going to multiply these two together. 625 times 40, which is going to get 25,000. Like I said, big number. And now we can go ahead and multiply the two of those together. 3.14 times that, 25,000. We get 78,500 inches cubed. And again, we have to remember that it's cubed as our entire volume for this cylinder. And if at any point this is going a little too fast for you, feel free to pause, write everything down, and make sure you're knowing where we are getting all these numbers from. So our next one is the rectangular pyramid. This one I find is the most confusing and difficult to remember formula. So we're going to continue writing it down all the time. So V equals, and we can do length times width times height divided by 3, or volume equals 1/3 length times width times height. Start off, we're going to find our length, which is just part of the base here, so that is 12. Our width is also part of the base, so we're going to multiply that by 6. And now for our height, what's really important to remember is that the height is going to be perpendicular to the base of the pyramid. So it's just like when we're working with triangles and you're finding the area, it has to be perpendicular. So the line that goes straight from the middle to the base, that forms a 90-degree angle. So our height is going to be 15. And we're going to divide all of those by 3 because we're going to be using this formula here. So we want to go ahead and start multiplying at the top. So we can do 12 by 6. And that gives us 72 times 15 divided by 3. And now we want to do 72 times 15, which gets us 1080. We're still dividing by 3. And if we divide 1080 by 3, we get 360. And this is in feet, so it's feet cubed. So that is our volume for this rectangular pyramid. Now you're going to want to go ahead and using your pencil and paper that you've been using this entire lesson, and I want you to try finding the volume of this rectangular pyramid. And remember, volume is length times width times height divided by 3, or volume equals 1/3 length times width times height. Go ahead and pause the video now and try it out. So if you've hit play, I am assuming that you've already finished and done your very best to find the volume of this rectangular pyramid. So I'm going to work with you step by step, follow along at home. So I like to use this formula, this first one. Both are perfectly fine. You're going to get the answer either way. That's going to be the same. So our length here is that 18.1 centimeters. And it can be 18.1 or the 17.6. Since you're multiplying, those are interchangeable. I'm just choosing 18.1. So volume equals 18.1. Our width is 17.6. And our height is 16 because it creates a perpendicular line to the base. and we're going to divide all of that by 3. So we want to go ahead and multiply 18.1 times 17.6. When we do that, we get 318.56. We're going to keep that 16 and that dividing by 3 because we haven't used it yet. So now we can multiply 318.56 by 16. And when we do that, we get 5,096.96 divided by 3, because we still haven't divided by 3, which we can go ahead and do now to get a super long answer that we can just go ahead and round. So it's going to be 1698.986 repeating. So that 6 is going to keep going on forever and ever. So our answer to the volume of this rectangular pyramid is 1,698.986. And again, we have to remember that this is volume, so centimeters squared. So if you've gotten this incorrect, go ahead and review, see where you made a little hiccup. And if you need questions, feel free to ask them. I'm hoping that at home y'all are still keeping up with your IXL practice and finding practice problems online, or just asking your teachers for help, because we're always here to help you. Other than that, I will see you next week when we continue learning about different kinds of math and how to solve them. Bye!